Mr. Mayor, we can do a countdown?
Are we ready, Ingrid?
Yeah. Counting down 10,
Okay.
2, and 1.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mayor, there is no request under roll call item A, so go ahead and move on with the roll call. Councilmember Davis?
Here.
Councilmember Kern?
Here.
Councilmember Mackin?
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell?
Here.
And Mayor Lentz.
Here. All right. Adoption of tonight's agenda. Anyone like to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Awards and presentations. Grab that. All right. So tonight we have the San Mateo County Mosquito and Vector Control District update, and it would be great if you would come on up and tell us what's happening in the mosquito vector world.
Mayor Lentz, members of the City Council, staff and honored guests. Thanks for inviting us to speak with you today. My name is Mike Goldman. I'm a Brisbane resident and professor of biology at San Francisco State University. I've got the honor of representing our city with the Board of Trustees for the San Mateo County Mosquito and Vector Control District. I get tongue-tied if I try to use the acronym. I'm also proud to mention that 3 of the 4 people in the laboratory at the district were educated in our department at San Francisco State. I've sent a brief report to the council about our most recent board meeting, but I'm pleased today to be able to introduce Casey Stevenson, who is the Director of Operations for the district. He's been with the district since 2008, Director of Operations since 2022, and out of more than 3,000 species of mosquitoes, Casey actually has a favorite, Aedes tahoensis, and maybe he'll have time to tell us about it someday.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, thank you for that nice introduction. The tahoensis mosquito is actually a snowmelt mosquito, so pretty unique. You know,
Wow.
find it up in Tahoe, hence the name. All right, so thank you for having me this evening. It's great to be back in Brisbane. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the work we do in Brisbane and what we did in 2024. Just a little bit about us. We're a taxpayer-funded special district. All of our technicians are certified through the California Department of Public Health. And our main goal is to protect the health and well-being of the residents of San Mateo County, especially the residents of Brisbane, since I'm here this evening. So that's our staff right there. We have about 23 people on staff. In Brisbane, we have about 99 actively monitored sites. So that could range from seasonal impounds, which are filled in by rainwater, people's residential properties where they have maybe a fountain that might not be working anymore, or miscellaneous containers. This is a brief snapshot of the work we did in 2024. We had a total of 23 total service requests. So those are when people from the public call, hey, we have yellow jackets on our property, or I'm noticing mosquitoes, or I might have a rodent issue. We come out the next day. You know, we're a 24-hour service. You know, we work Monday through Friday. So you call us on Monday, we'll be out on Tuesday to take care of these things. Of those 99 sites, they were all visited probably about 3 times a year. So we had 384 site inspections, and we conducted 47 site treatments for mosquitoes. We control them in the juvenile stage before they become adults. A little easier to control. When they're off flying off in the air, a little harder to catch that way. So we'd like to be proactive with our work. These are typical mosquito sources we see on people's properties. The biggest one I'd like to focus on are the ones with the containers. Those are something people on their own residential properties can control themselves. Our key tagline is dump and drain. So anytime you find something holding water on your property, you can examine it, or your best bet, just dump it out, safely. Don't dump it into something where it's going to hold water otherwise. Also, things we see, abandoned fish ponds that aren't working anymore. We have a mosquito fish we can put in them. Mosquito fish eat mosquito larvae, and it's a good biorational control for that. The main source of concern in Brisbane, a lot of ditches, seasonal impounds. You guys have beautiful natural areas around here. So we've had a lot of rain the last 3-4 years. So a lot of these things fill in with rainwater. And like I said, containers and yards. We do a lot of storm drain work. So you guys have storm drain system in Brisbane. We have these right-hand drive Jeeps. They're white. They're probably our most visible vehicle. Everyone knows us by that. You're like, oh, you drive the right-hand drive Jeep? I used to drive that. I started out as a seasonal employee. So this year in Brisbane, we treat over 2,400 catch basins. And this is kind of our primary protection throughout San Mateo County for West Nile virus. The mosquito that can transmit West Nile virus kind of breeds in these storm drains and subterranean systems like that. Brisbane Baylands, so kind of up closer to Geneva on Bayshore. That's kind of area we do inspect a lot. On an average year, it's holding about 10 acres of water that we kind of monitor every week, starting in the winter, all the way into the spring until the water dries up, basically. So this year we've treated about 20 acres out there. Last year we treated about 20 acres. One of the cool things we've started doing, we used to use an Argo, which was like an 8-wheeler with like tank tracks, and we'd have like a 25-gallon tank on it. We'd be applying a larvicide in there to control the juvenile mosquitoes. A lot of fun. I have a great job. I'm happy about it.
That's cool.
But
That is
we've
really
moved on to
cool.
drones, so we have 2 pilots. That's myself and our mechanic, Sean. We're FAA certified to fly a drone, and we apply a granular pesticide to the water out there. So we can actually put it up in the air, and it's done in about 10, 15 minutes. We could do about 10 acres. Whereas with an Argo, you got to take it out, get it ready, clean it, get all the mud and all that stuff off. So we've kind of been transitioning to utilizing drones more. Main Street ditch. So this kind of backs up to a residential area and a school also. So this is monitored throughout the year also. You can see it's clogged with a lot of cattails and stuff like that. So where there's vegetation and stagnant water, mosquitoes tend to breed. So we do survey this area throughout the year. Just make sure it's not producing mosquitoes, then we conduct treatments as necessary here. This is kind of just a little view of our traps that we set out. You guys might see these once in a while. They're usually pretty well hidden because mosquitoes like to hide adult mosquitoes. So we collect adult mosquitoes. These are overnight traps. So it's kind of a Coleman igloo cooler. It's got a little PVC for the batteries, and then it has a little fan in a bag that we capture the adult mosquitoes in. These are just put out overnight and kind of just gives us an idea of what type of mosquitoes are in the area, the abundance, and kind of gives us an idea where we start the searching for the juvenile mosquitoes so we can control them. Our biggest threat to the county right now is West Nile virus. So this is kind of why we do all this proactive work with juvenile mosquitoes on residential properties, doing all the storm drain control. It's just to keep West Nile virus out of our county. Last year we got about 37 positive West Nile birds. That was definitely up from the previous year, which was like about 15. So it did increase. We did not have any positive West Nile virus mosquitoes, which is always good. That means our proactive work is we're doing a good job, basically. So birds can fly fairly far. Santa Clara County does get a lot of West Nile virus positive mosquitoes, so we like to blame it on them, even though it's probably not their fault. But if you ever do get a dead bird, there's a dead bird hotline up there where it says report dead birds, and you just call them, be like, hey, we found a dead bird. Our agency will come out and pick up the bird, then we test it in-house at a lab, in our lab, basically, and we can determine if it has West Nile virus or not, and that determines what response we have based on that. And then, like I said, these are kind of the work we do. We come out the next day, not on weekends, but anytime anyone has yellow jacket, rodent inspections, mosquitoes, or anything like that, or just has general questions, please feel free to call us, or you can always come in. All the services are paid by property tax, basically, so there's no extra payments you need to provide us. Just a thank you would be nice. We do have an open house, just a little plug, June 21st, 2025. So it's great to come see all of our equipment, talk to our staff, see how much we really enjoy our jobs. That's all I got for you. Anyone got any questions?
Yeah, no, thank you, Casey. Frank?
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, well, I haven't seen any mosquitoes, so I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
What would warrant a rodent inspection?
There could be, you just see them running across your fence line. You could notice droppings in your backyard, and some people have basements, some people have garages. They notice droppings in there. So we come out for anything, so like broken vent holes in your screens, and we come out and give you a comprehensive report, and we provide it to you that you can provide to maybe a handyman to fix all the things we find, or to a private pest control operator.
Great, thank you. And then do you have a specific opinion on bird baths?
Bird baths, we do monitor a lot of those. As long as people flush the water regularly, like with a hose or things like that, those are the less likely things to produce mosquitoes. We have seen it happen, but it's more like the fountains and fish ponds and miscellaneous containers usually that are producing.
Cool, thank you, that's all.
Colleen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. And this is an odd question, but I'm really curious, so I'm going to ask it. I read about genetically modified sterile mosquitoes being released, and with West Nile being as serious as it is that something that it is at the point of a practical application, or is that still in the testing stage?
I think it still actually has to be approved for the United States. There are trials going on. And I know there's certain districts that are actually producing those mosquitoes themselves, the genetically modified mosquitoes. But it does take a lot of those mosquitoes to produce and release to outcompete the native ones, So it is in the pipeline. Some districts are utilizing it in different countries and testing it out here, so.
Oh, thank you for that. And also, I see your trucks all the time. Year round, so thank you for all that you do.
Okay,
Nice.
thanks a lot.
Terry?
So with taking out the mosquito larvae, how does that affect our frog populations?
Oh, that's a very good question. So the products we use primarily, I think you're talking about California red-legged frog and stuff like that.
Common frogs, I don't know.
Common frog, yeah. A lot of the products, at the rates we use our products, they're not very likely to affect them, And we can use also what we call bacterial products. We have a bunch of different active ingredients, and the bacterial products are definitely probably the best way to go, where there could be a potential red-legged frog.
But
population.
don't frogs eat the mosquito larvae?
Probably not at the amount that would be enough to control them. Because there could be a
But
lot
are we
of
taking away the food source from them?
No, frogs eat a lot of other things too. They're not just eating mosquito larvae.
Okay,
Yep,
Thank
good
you.
question though. Thank you.
That's a good question.
I don't have any questions.
All right,
Thanks for coming.
no, Terry got my question. So, thank you, Casey, and thank you, Michael, for wanting to serve and represent Brisbane in the district. So, well, you're all invited to stay if you want, or you can have dinner and spend time with your families.
I would love to. Thanks a lot. Have a
All
good
right,
thank you.
Bye.
take care. All right, so we're moving on to oral communications number 1. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak before the council on an item that's not on tonight's agenda? So, Ron, did you want to say something or ask a question? No? Okay. Got it, no problem. Let's see. So Ingrid, do we have anyone online? Okay, well then we'll move on to the consent calendar. Does anyone want to take any of the items off?
I would like to remove item H, please,
Item H.
just for a brief comment.
Okay. Anyone else on any of the other items? Okay, well then.
I'll make a motion to approve items C through G.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. So item H, Terry?
My only question or comment to staff and to the public would be that even though we are approving the contract to award the design of the Crocker Trail CEQA study, we don't have any funding to build any of the projects at this time, correct?
Through the chair, there isn't a specific allocated amount for this project at this time, correct?
Thank you. That's my only question/comment.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments regarding that?
I have a question.
Okay.
First off, once there is a preliminary design, is that at that point, do we become eligible for grants that could help fund a project like this and not until then?
But through the chair, yes, we could be eligible at that point. There's certain design thresholds for various grants that are out there, but typically, if you've gone through this process, you're eligible for the majority of the types of grants.
But you
we
would
want.
need to have the,
You need to do some design work, yeah.
All right, great. Okay. Anyone else?
Public comment.
No. So, does anybody want to make a motion to move
I'll
forward?
make a motion to approve item H on the consent calendar.
Okay.
second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Okay, so moving on to the public hearing. Consider introducing an ordinance approving a zoning text amendment 2024-RZ-2 citywide. Staff report, please.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. This item was continued from the City Council's meeting of October 17th. Based on council's feedback, the draft ordinance before you tonight has been significantly reduced in scope from that October version. It has been reduced to focus on a couple specific items called for in the housing element and to bring the city's ordinance into compliance with Senate Bill SB 478, which is also known as the Housing Opportunity Act. The other proposed code amendments from October that were not driven by state law or directly addressing housing element compliance have been removed from the draft that you have before you. So first, regarding compliance with Senate Bill SB 478, it was adopted in 2021, became effective in January of 2022. It applies to jurisdictions statewide, including Brisbane. Its intent was to provide greater opportunities for development of small apartment buildings in districts that are already zoned for multifamily development, and that's by establishing minimum floor area ratios, or FARs. The Senate bill requires FAR of 1.0 for projects between 3 and 7 units, and an FAR of 1.25 for projects between 8 and 10 units. It also includes provisions that prohibit cities from imposing lot coverage limits that would prevent the multifamily development to those FARs. Also, state law further precludes denial of development on a legal lot of record that's solely on the basis that it doesn't conform to the current lot size standards. The districts that SB 478 applies to are only those that permit multifamily development. And of those, it primarily affects the R2 and R3 districts, since the others don't have specified FAR maximums. Although the references to state law have been added to the other multifamily districts, so a project is not inadvertently denied in that FAR range. As noted in the agenda report, the Planning Commission recommended a uniform FAR of 1.25 in the R2 and R3 districts, and that's for projects of 3 units or more. And that's balanced on the flip side with removal of the parking exception that's currently allowed for those districts. Moving on to height limits, the housing element includes a program to increase the building height limits to 36 feet in the districts that permit multifamily development. The Planning Commission's recommendation to extend this to single-family districts has been removed from the draft ordinance based on feedback from Council in October. The height limit in both the R2 and R3 districts is currently 28 to 30 feet, depending on the slope of the lot. In the SCR01 and NCR02 districts, it's currently 35 feet. So all these would be amended to be 36 feet. The Parkside overlay districts already exceed the 36 feet at 38 and 40-foot limits. Regarding accessibility for accommodation for those with disabilities, the draft ordinance includes a proposed amendment to the reasonable accommodation provisions. It's aimed at easing the permitting process for accommodating people with existing disabilities and to allow people to age in place in their homes. It's consistent with the housing element as was outlined in the agenda report. It would allow approval of exceptions to height and setback exceptions for such features as elevators and ramps that cannot be otherwise accommodated through a district's development regulations. Then finally, the municipal code contains exceptions to lot size requirements. This section is proposed to be updated for consistency with SB 478 and also cross-referenced with the recently adopted urban lot split provisions and some other edits to that section for clarity. So in closing, staff recommends introduction of the ordinance amending the zoning text as provided. If you have any questions.
All right,
staff is happy
thanks.
to take.
Yeah. Excuse me. Council questions. I'll start on this side. Madison, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Terry, do you have any questions?
So beyond what the state requirements are for meeting the state law, did we go over and above with this ordinance?
We did. The recommendation from the Planning Commission for those units in the size range of 3 units to 7 units would be 1.25 versus the state's requirement of 1.0. So it would be a uniform 1.25. The state says 1.0 is what you must allow for 3 to 7, and then 8 to 10 is 1.25. So Planning Commission has a uniform 1.25.
And is that the only difference, or is there a height difference also?
The height is the same as was included in the housing element program, so no difference there.
It doesn't go beyond the state requirement?
Correct.
So
The-
we have to allow up to 36 feet per state requirements?
Yes, for compliance with the housing element commitment that we made.
Oh, with our housing element,
our
not
housing
with state
element.
law?
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Colleen, you have any questions?
Sorry, no, Mr. Mayor, I don't. Councilmember O'Connell asked my questions.
Okay. Frank?
I do have one question. So in the package that we received tonight on page 31, there are 2 tables. Each table has got 4 headers. And when we were talking about including the, or increasing the ratio to 1.25 for 3 units or more, is that for the ease of administration on the city's behalf? Or is there a special reason you wanted to streamline that and not break it out from 3 to 7 units or 8 to 10 units?
I think it's a consistency item mostly, and it did not seem, I think, unreasonable of a reach to have 1.25 across the board. So kind of a combination there.
Okay, thank you.
What page were you referencing?
Page 31.
Oh, okay, that's what I'm on. Just want to make sure.
Mr. Mayor, if you'll permit, I did think of
absolutely,
a
yeah.
question. So 36-foot height, you indicated is in our housing element. Does that absolutely bind us to that? Or do we have the prerogative to say, overall, we want 36 feet? In certain areas, it might be back to what it used to be.
When the housing element was adopted the last cycle, that was a requirement that HCD suggested to the city would be a requirement to have our housing element certified. We have to report back as to our compliance with our housing element, meeting the objectives and the goals that we set forth. So if we weren't to do that, we would essentially be reneging on a commitment we made that HCD imposed on the city as part of that process.
Understanding what you just said, however, our city has disparate characteristics in different areas. And if we were to re-examine this and say, good intentions, 36 feet everywhere, but upon second look, we've got a couple very small areas that this really is not practical.
I guess I'm not sure what would the basis for that be within, because we're applying it to the R2 and R3 districts only.
Yeah.
So the idea of having multiple height differences within the same district is nothing we do anywhere in Brisbane, so that would not really be consistent with our regulatory practice at the moment.
Okay, I think the difference is that when we talk about objectives that the state has for energy production and solar, and you start putting 36-foot high buildings in R2 and R3, where a lot of the existing housing stock is from the 1930s and 40s, 1 and 2 story, very nominal heights, and you start putting large buildings, you're negating solar production. Just a comment. I don't expect you to answer it. It's one of those unintended consequences that we have state legislators who really great ideas, but there are always things that they didn't think about.
Yeah.
But if I may, through the chair, we've taken your comments seriously, and we have been having conversations behind the scenes about, is there an option here for those that could be affected? We don't have one yet, but we have not forgotten this, and we'll continue to see if there's a way to move forward.
Well, and if I may, the obvious option is the 36-foot height limit when you look at existing multifamily housing. It's usually on corner lots, because corner lots were large lots when they started parsing out, or maybe someone would come in and buy several lots and it would be a big lot. But it's when you start doing infill that it's really problematic. And that has happened. There's one very good example on Monterey Street.
All right, yeah. Anyone else have any questions? All right, you know, I want to go back to that table that Councilmember Kern brought up. So in the R2, 7,500 square feet, how many lots approximately are greater than 5,000 square feet in the R2?
I'm sorry, greater than 5,000 or 75?
Yeah, are there a lot of them, or is it mostly the smaller lots?
I would say the vast majority are smaller lots, either 5,000 or the older ones, 2,500 square
Okay.
feet even.
All right.
Pretty rare for those bigger lots. I think as you get further up the hill out of this district into the R1, you get into some larger lots, but
Okay.
fairly rare.
All right. Yeah. You know, the reason that I ask is that, you know, when you, and I'm assuming that the column that says SB 478 compliant FAR of 1.0, this is the 1.0, and then the next column over is the FAR of 1.25, and that shows the difference.
That's correct. That was the intent, is to show essentially that first double column is the current, the middle double column is SB 478 compliant, straight up, and then the third column, of course, is the Planning Commission recommendation. That these higher lot sizes are just shown for illustration to see. I wanted to get up to a lot size where we jump from 10,000 square feet to 20,000 square feet, and that for the R2 is that jump from a 1.0 FAR to a 1.25 FAR.
You got it.
So that's the only reason I showed these large lots, but I don't see those as actually practical. And
Got it. Yeah, you know, the reason I kind of, you know, fixated on the 7,500 is that, so the FAR of 1 is 8,100 square feet, whereas then if we do the 1.25, it goes up about 1,200 square feet. So, I mean, you know, some homes are 1,200 square feet in Brisbane. So that seemed significant to me.
900.
Is it? 8,100 to 9,375?
Oh, she was just saying hers.
I said my house is 900 square feet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were challenging
no.
my math too.
No. You're commenting on 1,200 being small, and
Well, you're right. Our first house was, I think, 875. So there are homes that are 1,200 or smaller. So was that discussed at the planning commission level?
I think to some degree, whether they got into that level of detail, I don't recall, but it was laid out for them, the difference between these FAR differences. I should add, it doesn't show up in this table, but the center column takes into account, these are essentially, I think I based this on 1 and 2 bedrooms, which, yes, on the footnotes, which would require 1 covered parking space per unit, so 200 square feet, which is exempted, essentially. So somebody on those bigger sizes, likely they're going to have 3 bedrooms, which would require yet another parking space. And so it kind of, it gets bigger. That center column, actually, the number gets bigger if they go for 3-bedroom units.
All right. And then in regards to the 3 units, how do ADUs play into that equation?
So the ADUs are not addressed through SB 478, so they'd have to comply with the ADU ordinance. And I'd have to look back at what specifically provisions there are for multifamily development.
All right. And then on page 36, so under letter H, and it's talking about the articulation requirement and that a wall can't be greater than 20 feet in width. That'd be a really wide wall, but 20 feet in height. So could a fence be 20 feet tall, or am I reading that correctly?
No,
fences and a wall.
so fences are typically, they're going to be in the setback area, and there's specific rules that
So a fence
deal
wouldn't
with
apply to a
fences, which
fence.
would be
Okay.
8 feet in height.
No, that sounds good. And then on page 42, and this is something that came up during our priority workshop, something that you had brought up, Madison, and this is it's at the top of the page and talking about storefronts. And so, you were saying that the 600 feet doesn't really seem viable.
Oh, it was like smaller. I feel like the one that came in on San Bruno that was proposed was like smaller than that.
It was like 80 feet. They were little
It was like
cutouts.
it was like a
cubbyhole.
window. Like,
But-
yeah.
They're like 200 square feet.
Yeah, that's what 600 is totally it.
600 is fine. Okay, so this is a minimum floor area for storefront use is 600 square feet. Do we ever make exceptions then to that? Okay, and why would there be an exception?
We have, in the case that Councilmember Davis just brought up, that was the senior housing project for 16 units on San Bruno Ave, and it went to 3 stories. Most of the bottom floor was in parking, and to get the parking for those 16 units, it took up most of their floor area, and so they wanted to make it more of almost a display window, and so the Planning Commission provided an exception to that case. My thinking was that it was a little higher than that, but it's, neither
was a
here
long
nor
time ago.
there. It was definitely under
It was a
the
long time.
600.
Yeah,
If
okay.
I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
was on
absolutely.
the planning commission. There were two exceptions I can remember. The senior center, and that was really small. They said it would be like a flower stand.
Flower window.
Is what they,
yeah, yeah.
like an open flower stand. The other was a house on Visitation being built next to the apartments across from 23 Club. And that was the situation where in the garage, I believe they were trying to use even the hydraulic lifts, and they couldn't satisfy getting the cars in and out without reducing the size of the storefront. So they were given a waiver on the size, and I think it ended up at 200 square feet.
For the storefront
Yes.
that soon will be unveiled.
Yes.
Okay.
Nobody in it.
And at the time, the planning commission was questioning this requirement for storefronts for that very reason. Because we have a lot of empty, very small storefronts.
That Economic Vitality Subcommittee is, got the task. We're going to be on it. All right, so then last question on page 49. And just to get clarification, so, this particular area is basically Parkside. And at the top of the page, it says the addition of an attached or detached accessory dwelling unit greater than. So are ADUs allowed in Parkside? That, it didn't seem that was something that we had talked about when we were putting that together. And I know, ADUs just doesn't seem realistic.
A lot of the ADU requirements are, again, imposed directly by the state in terms of what we have to allow. Practically speaking, if you had a Parkside development, I don't think ADUs would be into the equation. But again, a lot of this language is to satisfy
Just to satisfy the
letter
state.
of state law.
Got it, that's what I figured. All right, thank you, guys. All right, any other questions before we open up to the public? Okay, any members of the public would like to ask a question or comment? Anybody online, Ingrid?
No, Mr. Mayor, are you opening up the public hearing now?
Okay. All righty, well, I don't see any hands raised, so I'll take a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
I'm sorry,
Do we have to make a
I'm sorry.
motion to open it?
we should take a motion to open the public hearing and then,
Oh, we
yeah.
need-
I make a motion
just
to
declare.
open the public
Oh,
hearing.
I didn't know we needed to.
You just need to declare it that you're
Oh,
opening
okay.
up.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. So I'm opening up the public hearing. Does anybody in the audience have a question or comment? No? Anyone online?
No.
No. Okay, so now I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll open it up for discussion.
Can I go first?
You may, Terry. Yes, please.
So, it seems to me, looking at the table on page 31, that if we are to increase the FAR to 1.25 in exuberance of the state law, we're going to be the units will be bigger and therefore less affordable. And I think that defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do here, to create more affordable housing, if possible, or more housing, period. And so I don't see why we'd be doing that when in 5 more years, the state is going to be asking for more numbers on more housing and more density, and we're going to have nothing to throw at them. So I would say that we shouldn't go over and above what the state is requiring us to do in order to make bigger units that are less affordable. And we should hold that back and see if it's some way we can use that 0.25 later when we have to.
All righty. Anybody want to make a comment or piggyback on that? Colleen?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would agree. I think that not being required to do the 1.25, I don't see the point in it. R2 and R3 are, again, very small lots. And we've been talking about 25 by 100-foot lots. And I live on a lot that's way less than that. And I'm not the only one. There's quite a few that are way smaller. And it just seems to not make sense. We've talked about trying to increase housing stock. I'm in favor of that. But I think, again, feeding the pipeline of large, expensive units is not the goal. We're trying to produce some affordable housing, and if we increase the FAR, is that what we're doing? I don't think so. So, Councilmember O'Connell, I thank you very much. Your comment, I think it's a very interesting aspect I hadn't thought of, and I would agree with you.
All right.
Just as an FYI, while I have that 900 square foot house, I also have an almost 9,000 square foot lot. And it would just mean that is basically landlocked by my house from the front, and the existing slope from the front. And so it would behoove someone, whenever that passes on, someone would buy that and they could build, I don't know, 3 units plus 3 ADUs and God knows what else. Or maybe 9 with the ADUs and junior ADUs.
We're gonna have a
And that's
little
just sort of,
village.
that's sort of
over there.
terrifying to me to think that, it just gives a whole new meaning to the $1 million teardown. To see that happening in our little town, it just scares the bejesus out of me.
Marion. Madison.
I mean, I think that the point that Councilmember O'Connell made about affordability is an interesting one. I am generally of the opinion that the smaller the units, the more affordable. And I think that the more small units that we have, obviously the better, because that's really what helps to move the needle on affordability for, people that are really on the very edge of being able to afford anything, as many studios as you can get. And sometimes it might be a family living in a studio, but that's what they can afford. And so I would agree with that sentiment. I have no problem with the 1.0 versus the 1.25. I don't see the need to go above and beyond when it's still possible that you could still create a lot of units anyway. It's not like you're changing the amount of units, you're just changing the size of the units.
So you got the 3.
And so the 36, I don't feel comfortable trying to renegotiate that number. I think we make a commitment in our housing element, and we should follow through with that. And to try to revise that, to me, I think just puts us under a microscope and is not in good faith. So I wouldn't be in favor of reviewing height limits, but yeah.
That makes sense. Frank.
Thank you. I absolutely am in agreement. So I'm going to be succinct on the FAR requirements here. I think we should go with the minimum to be compliant, and that would be 1.0 for 3 to 7 units and 1.25 for 8 to 10 units with no change to the existing parking exceptions. Regarding the height and the 36-foot increase in height, I have to tell you, I am new to the solar game. So I had solar installed about 3 years ago. And I will tell you that when those panels are shaded, we're losing solar efficiency up to 80%. So that means it's the equivalent of, really a rundown battery at that point. So on December 21st every year, that's our day with the shortest daylight, that sun drops behind the mountain at about 2:45, and our solar production goes to nearly 0. And that's during the day. It's because Brisbane falls into shade because the sun is setting. So I'm thinking through this 36-foot height increase, and I'm really thinking it through. And I'm like, we've encouraged people to move towards clean energy, install those solar panels, which are a significant investment. I mean, they start at $10,000 and go upwards to $20,000, $30,000 from there. And so I just think it's something we need to consider, and it's something that I'm really sort of wrestling with.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Frank, and only.
We also joined the Solar Club 2 years ago. We have a house next door that put an addition on the back with an ADU, and it immediately reduced our solar production because it's shading part of the panels in the morning hours of the day. So after investing in brand-new electric HVAC, heat pump water heater, electric washer and dryer, and we have 10-year commitment to pay for this and no recourse. And this is one of the things we're trying to encourage everyone, and it's a bit of a dichotomy that the state wants housing and wants us to produce energy, but the devil's in these details. And I wish there was a way we could put some sort of a clause in here that said that the 36-foot height limit would be subject to an approval by the zoning administrator, because if someone next door has solar, depends on which side of the house they're at. You know, is it on the north side, south side? In some cases, it might not matter. On a corner, if it's on the north corners, it usually doesn't matter. But it can impact someone, and it's a financial commitment that it really bites then when you lose that power. So I agree with Councilmember Kern in that regard.
Can I add one more comment?
No, absolutely.
Yeah, you know, if you talk to a solar salesperson or anybody who's producing these panels, they'll tell you, if there's light outside, your panel is absorbing that light and converting it to power. But unless it's 100% direct sunlight, the efficiency doesn't even matter. So on an overcast day, on a really dark overcast day, we're maybe running at about 30 to 40%. So while it's true, it is absorbing it, it's not enough to really make the difference that we're sort of counting on. So there's my soapbox.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, John, I have a question for you. And you know, I've had constituents come to me with the exact same concerns. So what would be the process? And Jeremy, if you want to jump in too, but you know, what would be the process for taking this feedback, and then does that become a workshop with the Planning Commission? And so kind of help us out here. What could we do? Because we need to get back to our constituents and let them know that we're trying to do something.
Well, I think there's a couple things here. One is, I think as Jeremy mentioned, we are trying to work through, you know, you get into tree issues and you get into building heights and things that shade solar panels. These are not just a building height issue, so it's kind of a holistic issue. That we've been talking about how we could wrestle with that. What are the best practices? So, you know, I guess the regulatory part of this is very complicated because one is in the R3 zone, we already have requirements to only impose, you can only apply objective development standards under state law as well. So the idea if we're going to have this floating height limit, that is not going to be an objective standard that meets the state requirements, period. You know, it's not something that can be determined by the zoning administrator on a case-by-case basis. That would violate other provisions of state law. So that is kind of the rock and the hard place we would be in terms of not having a fixed height standard within a zoning district.
So are you kind of saying that to make the changes, it would have to come from the state legislature, rather than something that the city of Brisbane can adopt?
Yeah, if there's going to be this kind of recognition of trade-offs and giving cities, individual cities to sort of balance that issue is not a tool we have in our, you know, tool belt at the moment.
All
We're
right.
given very fixed sort of regulatory standards that the state, boxes to be checked by the state.
Okay.
Yes, you're doing this. Yes, you're doing this. Okay, you're good to go.
And if it was the council's pleasure, we could write a letter and on our behalf and send it to our state representatives and see if they're willing to do something about it.
Absolutely. In fact, I would imagine they would hope we would do something like that for them.
I have a question, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor. Is it possible with and I hate to say a project next to existing solar, because if we have infill with 36-foot height, it can negate someone who wants to install solar, and that's not fair either. We're talking all about equity here, and we're negating equity at the same time. Because I think everybody should have the opportunity to have some free energy from the sun. Is it possible to have some articulation on that upper height, knowing, I mean, it's obvious in Brisbane, the sun comes up one area and it's going to set in the west. To have a building, if it's going to be 36 feet, new building, that it has to articulate so it doesn't shade the building next door, because these are narrow lots. 25 feet is a very narrow lot.
Yeah, I mean, we could look at crafting some language that would create a performance standard. Again, we're back to what is objective, and that is going to be the trick. I don't think we're not going to be able to do that tonight, that's for
Right.
sure.
Sure.
But
Is
come
it
back
even
with, is there
possible,
some
too?
performance standard that is objective? Yeah, we're glad to look at that, if that's an option.
If I can introduce one other concept here, and maybe Tom, you want to jump in. I mean, just the basic concepts of a private property owner being able to develop their property in the way that they want,
Yeah.
and how that, can negate some of these other issues that we're talking about. So it's a tough one to get to. I don't know if, Tom, if there's a legal way to say what I just said. Tom, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Thanks, Jeremy. The tension between private property owner and what the state has done has been very clear up here. And so far, the legislature has not loosened the restrictions. I think what's going to happen, this is just my crystal ball, is as the regulators try to enforce this stuff, not just HCD, there are other environmental things, they're having difficulty because there are parts of it that are very subjective. So I think the soonest we're going to get anything on private property owners is whenever that happens, which is probably 2 to 3 years from now. They heard all the stuff on private, and they just didn't. They went ahead with the laws as described by John.
All right. Hey, Karen Cunningham, I see your hand raised. Let me just get through council questions, and then I'll call on you if, but I guess we'd have to open.
Do we close the public hearing?
We did close it, so.
Yeah, so we
have to
we should not reopen it.
Yeah,
unless we
okay.
can.
Sorry about that, Karen. All right, so council members, any other comments or questions? Terry?
So, in our housing element, did we state the 36 feet in the entirety of Brisbane or only in certain areas or zoning?
It's in the R2 and R3 zones only, and that's what this ordinance proposes.
So
Not in the R1 zone.
In the R1 zone, it remains at 30 feet?
28, 30.
Yes, R1, it remains at 28 to 30, depending on the slope. It applies to the multifamily districts. So it's R2, R3, NCR02, which is already at 35 feet there, and the SCR01, which is also already at 35 feet. So that's just a difference of 1 foot.
Okay.
It's a
so in
bigger
the
difference for the
R1,
R2 and R3.
It's not at 36 feet.
Correct. R1 and RBA have been taken out of this draft based on the input from council last October.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I think we're all in agreement. So is there anyone that wants to make the motion to clarify? And I know you want to do it, Frank. You seem to have it down.
Are we in agreement?
Are we or is this going to, if we change it back to the 1.0,
Well, I thought that's what we
does that
decided to
mean
do.
that it needs to go back to staff and come back to us?
No, we can make that modification
Yeah, I'm good with that.
very easily this evening.
Okay.
Okay, so does someone want to provide that direction?
Are
But
there?
we're not discussing, we're not touching height.
I don't.
Height is only a 1 foot.
There's only 1 foot
increase.
difference, and you mentioned that, we'd have to readdress the housing element.
Yeah,
and
but I
that
mean, I'm
doesn't
hearing
make
other
sense.
things.
I think we're all in agreement that we're gonna go to the 1.0.
Okay.
If there's something else out there that you want to all talk about, then, okay, let's bring it up, but I don't think that was coming from anyone.
Mr. Mayor, are you
So-
talking about, because we're on this page 31, one is with existing parking and the other is eliminating parking exceptions. Which one are we talking about?
Okay,
Talking about 1.0, the middle column, 1.0 for 3 to 7, 1.25 for 8 to 10, no change to existing parking exceptions.
so, yeah, so what is the pleasure of the council? Where do we want to be?
I would like to be at the minimum state FAR across the board.
Okay,
Same.
okay, we got a
Same,
same.
Same.
All right, so, can I have a motion then
Is-
to give direction, or do you? Okay,
Well,
One
wait a
question
minute,
just to-
staff is,
Just to clarify, the parking exception stays as it is, no change to the currently enforced parking exceptions.
is the parking exceptions required by state law?
No, there's something that Brisbane provides for in the current ordinance.
And is it required by our housing element?
No.
Then I wouldn't increase that amount.
Agree.
Mr. Mayor,
yeah, Colleen,
if we look on page 29,
yes.
SB 478 compliance, you can't do an FAR of 1.0 for any size number of units because it says it requires an FAR 1.0 for 3 to 7 and 1.25 for 8 to 10.
Okay. Well, there you go.
If that's true.
That is correct, and the ordinance can be revised where the floor area ratio will be tied to those standards. Projects between 3 and 7 have an FAR of maximum of 1. Projects 8 to 10 have a maximum FAR of 1.25. And that could be specified in the ordinance, and that would be fully in compliance with state law.
Okay, and the same, we do not have to change the parking requirements that included in the that give an exemption for parking in the FAR.
What I'm hearing is you want to delete the current exception that the city
That would be
currently
my
provides
request,
an
that
exemption.
that would be included in the FAR.
And that could be done tonight as well.
Mr. Mayor, I have
Sure.
one other point that I forgot
Okay.
about I'd like to
All right.
bring up.
All right,
Also in here, it was proposed, and I can't find the page, about disabilities, reasonable accommodations. And there was a page, let me see if I can find it, where it said that if a developer wanted to propose a building where there would be someone with disabilities, the zoning administrator could do waivers. But it also said, in the way that I guess our ordinance draft is written, that they don't have to have a person who will be housed in that building. It could be just built as if someone was, and then you could put handicapped ramps in the setback. And so, here we go, page
What page?
32, I found it. Page 32, under housing element programs, go down underneath housing element programs, the second paragraph, planning commission's recommendation, reasonable accommodations. But if you go down to the very last paragraph, it says these features may be permitted and then installed prospectively before the feature is needed for a specific person, with the aim for allowing people to age in place, for easing the burden and process those who may have already have an accessibility need. I have a little bit of a problem of giving a developer leeway to just do that. I would prefer that they have to ask for it. Because I'm not so confident that it's not going to be abused. And the fact that they can apply for it then I would feel more comfortable. They would have to go to the zoning administrator. They'd have to make the case of why they want it, rather than it just being applied anywhere, which,
But doesn't this regulation say that if they request it, that they would build the building as such so that later and sometime, maybe in the future, they make it handicapped accessible? Wouldn't we want it if they are going to say in their plans that they want to allow for setback easement to be able to put in handicap features, that they have to build that then? It shouldn't be maybe sometime later in the future.
yes, I
We're
would
going
agree.
to want it.
Yeah.
And so we're going
You
to need
need
to
to do it.
intrude on these setbacks now, but only if they're building it. Not building it in the future, maybe.
Yeah, I would agree with your interpretation on that. This whole language, we think, is going to be more applicable to retrofits, because there's also, basically, this exception is a last resort. You know, the preference is that it be addressed within the existing applicable zoning district standards. And we have a new building, a new developer, somebody wants to do a spec house. It's a lot easier to accommodate whatever kind of accessibility needs they have within the footprint of what they're going to build. You often have this come up with a house that's already built, right? And then they want to retrofit it. So that's really, to me, this is really what this is getting at. For some future retrofits, it'll simplify the
But
approval
then
process.
wouldn't we want to say that's in a retrofit, not in a new program? And I'm not reading with her comments, with Councilmember Mackin's comments, I'm not reading it in the red line version, because that's not the page I'm on, and that's where I put my notes. But
If that's your intent, or that's what you want to do, you can certainly limit it to that.
I mean, I think if someone's building handicapped housing, and they know they're building handicapped housing, they should build that into their permit to begin with. If you're retrofitting, of course, that's a separate issue.
We're saying the same thing, it's just the language as written isn't as explicit. Our intent isn't as explicit as you're stating, so if we could certainly clarify that if you wish.
Does that answer your concern?
Bye. Okay.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm not seeing it in the red line as you just described, Councilmember O'Connell. You're correct.
Okay. All right, so anything else that we want to add?
Do we need to put this in an official motion or just give staff direction?
Let's see, so
I think we're gonna have to do
we
a
need to,
specific-
yeah,
I
it's a
think
public
so.
hearing, so we need to
Yeah.
give a motion. So, but
Do you wanna
let's make
make it?
sure that, yeah,
We don't have to give the exact language.
No, we understand the intent.
And then this will come back for a reading
second
so that we
times.
can make
Yes,
sure
look at the
that,
final language,
that the final language is
Yep.
appropriate. With that, I would make a motion to approve. I guess I need to do it officially here.
Introduce.
Introducing zoning text amendment 2024 RZ2 citywide with the necessary adjustments to the FAR and to the accessibility standards.
And the carport.
Oh, and the removal of the exemption for carports.
Second.
Okay, everyone good with that? All right, so we have a motion, and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Staff reports, city manager's report, city updates, and upcoming activities.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'll be brief tonight. Got a couple events coming up in the next week. Youth, on the 8th is the Youth Storyteller Club, excuse me. This is I believe, the second of 3, and it'll be 3 to 4 at the library. Probably stealing your thunder a little, Mr. Mayor. The mayor's going to have his office hours at the mobile home park on the 9th. And the spring giveaway for compost is coming up on the 10th, and the location for that is under Tunnel Bridge. That's all I have. Thank you.
I'm sorry, the location's where?
It's just under Tunnel Avenue on the M&E side, if that makes sense. I can send you the information.
Okay, so out at Scavenger?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
That's all.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. All right, Kay, city council meeting schedule. So, anything new there, Jeremy?
Yeah, just a few things. We're putting it up on the screen so you can follow along. So pointing at the schedule in June and July, the second meeting in June is on Juneteenth, so that's being canceled. We're proposing an additional meeting be added for the 26th to cover those issues that we would have covered otherwise on the 19th. That also covers the cancellation in early July as well. So we're looking for approval of that. Thank you.
All right, everyone good? All right, thank you. Moving on to item L, countywide assignments and subcommittee reports. So we will report out on subcommittee meetings. Okay, so what have we done? I mean, I know we've changed the format here, so I'm not exactly sure. So should council members just talk about it, or do you just give us a brief update?
Well, I think the component that staff has here is just related to the subcommittees.
Okay.
We have the written report, and if council members have any comments, this would be the appropriate time to ask questions related to that. And then number two, upcoming subcommittees, we'd be looking for some direction for those two upcoming meetings.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would suggest that council members each give the reports as they normally have, and then we could move to this item.
All right, no, that sounds good. All right, so item A, Public Art Advisory Committee is Davis and O'Connell.
Councilmember O'Connell and I met along with the rest of the Public Art Advisory Committee to discuss another stairway that is funded and currently in the design process between Tulare and Santa Clara Street. And I understand that there's several legs of that going down, but there's just money right now from Tulare to Santa Clara. And there is the potential to have large landings that could have like a bench or some other art element on them. And so Public Works wanted to gauge the committee's interest in collaborating on another stairway project. And the feedback from the committee was yes, definitely. And so they will loop us in at the appropriate time to do an RFP for that. And of course, that will come to council. And the stairway will begin in spring 2026 and finish summer 2026. So we're hoping that if we have an artist, we can get them on board in November. Do you want to add anything?
No, I think that it was great that Public Works was able to send the director to the meeting and that he gave a lot of clarification on what would be easy for them to achieve as far as making the stairway wider in areas where it might be appropriate for art or for additional lighting and that kind of thing. And I think it was a great meeting. We didn't really discuss specifics, but I think it was good to get their perspective on when the timeline would be and what could be possible.
Mm-hmm.
One thing of note too is that, because of the project that we're doing now, really has opened up, I think, like Public Works to look for opportunities for us to collaborate again. And as Terry mentioned, they typically wouldn't make a big landing. There'd be no reason to do that. But with thinking about art being integrated into the site, that can inform the design from the very beginning in a way where it wouldn't have otherwise. So I think that it's just it's going to be really nice to see the way that art and Public Works can meld together to create stunning public spaces.
Definitely. All right, thank you. Any questions from council? Okay, moving on to item B, Quarry Subcommittee. Terry, that's me and you. Do you want to give an update?
Sure. The mayor and I met with the developers of the quarry. They did not really go into specifics of what their project looked like or would be. They did go over their bullet points of what they were moving forward with at this point, and stressed that they had put a lot of thought into this and were really looking forward to engaging with us. We gave them some questions that we had that will need to be addressed via staff to the subcommittee, and then go back to another meeting with them. I do see in the report out that there is an error, that they were talking about having a public engagement event on April 23rd at Lippman Middle School. That has been canceled for that venue. I don't know if they have another venue at that point. But basically, this was just an introductory for the mayor and I to meet the developers and talk to them. And there was nothing obviously substantial that came out of that meeting at this point, because it was just a very introductory meeting.
Now, there was the geological hazard abatement district
Yeah.
that we agreed that made sense to move forward with doing that, and I believe that the developer is doing that. So Jeremy,
don't
do you
think-
have any updates on what Orchard is doing in regards to that district?
Well, if I may correct the record just a little bit, I don't think
fair
that they're doing anything specifically with
Okay.
it. It was essentially, it was an idea that was developed partly through our consultant team and partly from Orchard Partners. So it may be a mechanism that we
It
can
may
use.
be. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah, so
okay.
I think the opportunity for the subcommittee is to have some conversations about what that looks like. We've got some people we could bring in, give you some further information, but it's nothing's set in stone. This
Yeah,
comes
yeah,
later.
Yeah, I don't
Okay,
think
I
we agreed in any respect that it would be a good idea or beneficial to us
Okay.
or them specifically. We had some concerns about how that it would look like, and we didn't have the legal resources to really find that out while we're in that meeting. So it's something that's certainly ongoing and might be a creative tool to work with them on that project.
Yeah, okay, no, exactly. Okay, so moving on to item C, Age-Friendly Subcommittee. That was Frank and myself. Frank, you want to give an update?
Absolutely. We had a meeting on 3/25. I just have to say it's truly a pleasure to serve on this subcommittee. The community support for this and the turnout is just amazing. We spent time and we went through three additional domains along with the goals. And had open dialogue along those lines. We still have not gotten through all the domains, so we're going to be rescheduling, or I should say scheduling an additional meeting in May to cover the community support and health services and emergency services domains. And we did receive a really interesting email last minute from the Felton Institute of Senior Community Service Employment Programming to discuss senior opportunities. And I know staff is taking a hard look at that right now and seeing how we might incorporate that. So I'm really excited to receive that sort of bit of information at the last minute.
Yeah, it was a great meeting.
It was a very good meeting.
Very well attended by the public. We held it in here so that we could accommodate everyone. So, yeah, the seniors are very active. So it is fun to work on that subcommittee with you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Sure.
just a comment. Just reading the report here and what you went over, it's really impressive in thinking about the details, because those details really do matter. And so my compliments to both of you. And I think you're doing a great job with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Through the chair, if I could just
Yeah.
share, knowing that there's a third meeting coming up, one of the items that staff is going to prepare for that meeting for the subcommittee is sort of an analysis of the various projects within the domains to see, there's some things we're doing right now, so we want to call those out. Some things that we think are low-hanging fruit, very easy to accomplish, we want to call those out in a particular way and go from there to give you both an opportunity to create some structure around next steps.
Great, thanks. Okay, upcoming subcommittees. So we have Sierra Point.
Mr. Mayor, I
Oh.
have a PCE
Oh,
report,
I'm sorry. Please.
and it's short.
Okay.
Wow.
Couple quick updates. PCE announced it now has the largest EV charging site in the entire nation. There's a project in South San Francisco that will be completed at a multifamily housing project with 200 smart outlets for charging. And to date, 1,500 chargers have been installed in PCE customer territory. 70% of those are at multifamily housing, and that's really important because tenants of multifamily housing have repeatedly said it's so difficult for them to buy electric vehicles because the problem with charging. So that's being addressed. Also, PCE is taking applications for summer interns from college, undergrad, or graduate students with an interest in the ever-growing energy sector. And I would note that several PCE staff members that are now on board started out as interns and were offered jobs. So these are really valuable internships. And I would encourage anyone interested to hop on it very fast because they go very quickly when people start applying. And finally, there's a whole lot of new legislation introduced before the deadline in February, and there's a lot related to energy. I'll be coming back to you with more information on it. Some of it's not so good, so we'll see where it goes. Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
No shade to anybody else, but I think your reports from Peninsula Clean Energy are my favorite of all of the county reports that anyone gives.
Well,
They're just so like well prepared. Not that anyone else's aren't, but they're just so good.
Thank you. It's a very uplifting assignment.
I can't
You-
wait. Like every meeting,
It-
I'm like, I can't wait for the PCE update from Colleen.
The PCE board and all of the PCE staff are so motivated. The energy in the room is palpable. There is no one dragging their feet. Every meeting, people are really excited to be there because
Yeah.
there is so much progress. And PCE has really established themselves as leaders in the entire country. So it's often where, as board members, we sit there and go, wow, I'm pinching myself that I'm able to be sitting here helping craft the next chapter right as we have these meetings. So it's a great assignment.
We're
Thank
lucky to
you.
have you on. You're such a good fit for.
So-
thank you for representing us.
Yes, thank you. I do have a report out on a
Okay.
last night I had an SFO roundtable meeting and we met the new airport director who is a local man, Mike, and I am not going to pronounce his last name because I would butcher it, who was worked for SFO in their finance, was their chief financial officer, went to Denver for 4 years, and then came back. And now he is the chief director of the SFO airport. He is also never sold his family home, so he's located right there in Millbrae. And as a second note, I am taking over the chair of the ground-based noise part of the SFO roundtable, and we will be hosting the meetings here in Brisbane once I can coordinate the dates on when those subcommittees will be meeting. And then also the technical working group, I think, will also be hosted here. And again, I need to work with staff on when those meetings will be. So if people in Brisbane are interested in what's going on at the technical level or the ground-based noise level with the airport noise, the meetings will be much more accessible.
Yeah.
Because they'll be here
hopefully in our building here for the next year or two.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Terry, I know Peter Grace would be really ecstatic about this, so.
Well, we'll see if we can do him justice. But
Yes.
the meetings have taken a change in tone because we don't have the access to the FAA anymore. But we're hoping to move on with other direction that we can do until we get that access back.
Yeah, well, hopefully you do have that access, because it's hard to make changes if you can't communicate with the people that are causing the problems.
Well, at least we still have a very good advocacy with the airport itself, and some of the things that the airport is doing requires them to speak to the FAA, and wherever possible, they will be working in parallel to get some of our needs addressed. But again, they have a direct line that we temporarily do not have.
Yeah, all right, well, thank you. Frank?
I have a report out from the Caltrain Local Policymakers Group. We met last week. It was a jam-packed agenda. There were 10 different topics discussed. I'm going to boil that down to the 4 of my favorites. So there's a lot of work going into parking strategy. They're doing a new parking and curb management strategy, trying to optimize parking and curbside space at many of the stations along Caltrain. They're also taking, topic number 2, they're also taking a hard look at corridor crossings, getting creative on what they can do to increase both safety and mobility at these crossings. We'll get more information on that. They are super excited to report out that electrification has led to a significant increase in ridership, particularly on the weekends and off-peak hours, which is great.
Need that.
And then last but not least, they're employing some new technology called Rail Sentry, which is absolutely fascinating. It uses LiDAR technology to identify risks on the tracks, and then they apply overlay of AI on top of that. So what LiDAR will do is identify an object, feed it into the AI. The AI says, hey, that looks like a car. It can notify the engineer, train dispatchers, security personnel, emergency services, whatever they need to do. But they're employing that technology now to find objects on the tracks and alert people. So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Kern, did they mention to you anything? It was mentioned to us at PCE, and we didn't go into a lot of detail, that Caltrain is working on a system when they do braking, they can recycle the energy back.
Regenerative braking.
Regenerative, that's it, yeah.
Yeah, they did talk about that actually, about how they're employing that on the new trains. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Very exciting, because
It
the fact that they're able to do that is really something.
Yeah.
Had I known you were interested, I would have included that in my top 4. That's all I have.
Any
Thank you.
other countywide assignments? Oh, thank you for serving, representing Brisbane at the county level. All right, upcoming subcommittee meetings. We have a Cedar Point Parkway Parks and Open Space Subcommittee meeting on 4/7. Then the liaisons to OSEC is on 4/9. And then we have some proposed subcommittees that will be announced. So on to written communications. Ingrid, what do we have?
If I may, I'm sorry,
Oh,
Mr. Mayor, just to go back to item number 2, the Sierra Point Parkway, just to give a little more detail. The draft agenda that I shared with the 2 subcommittee members is essentially just a discussion of, the current plan and how to bring that forward. So I just wanted to be very transparent about what the subcommittee would be doing, and vis-a-vis potentially a recommendation back to the council. So appropriate for the council to provide any direction to the subcommittee at this time.
All right, sure. Anything? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy, for bringing that up. Okay, so written communications. Ingrid, please.
Correspondence was received from Gerard Manning regarding urgent stop the state from taking away our reach code powers. Also from Una Kim, opposition to the Guadalupe Quarry redevelopment project. Lastly, Nancy Laksamana, big rigs on central Brisbane city streets.
All right, great, thank you.
Didn't we have something from Emil?
I personally didn't receive that. If you could forward that to me. Emil
And-
Manara?
And Caracas?
Let me check my records.
Okay.
Yeah, in regards to parking. Okay, so moving on to oral communications number 2. Anyone in the audience like to speak on something that we didn't discuss already? Okay, anyone in the audience like to speak during oral communications? I don't see anyone's hand raised. All right, so we will adjourn the council's regular session meeting and go directly into closed session. Thank you, everybody.